Money laundering enables cartels to produce the most lethal thing that they produce around the world, and that's corruption. It enables them to be able to control countries.
This was not just a handful of houses. It was a network worth £17 million, spread across 59 properties and stretching as far as Bangor.
I was embedded in real businesses. Had an air charter service with a private jet. We had a jewelry chain with 30 locations on the East Coast. A lot of cash goes through the Diamond District every single day. People who want to buy dollars are oftentimes importers around the world who otherwise have to go through their central bank and spend 25% of their money to officially get...
This couple, they were massive on the real estate scene in the UK. They were not involved in themselves in the dirty work, but a lot of the money that went going into their businesses came from...
By embedding dirty cash into residential rentals, syndicates create reliable, legitimate income streams that are incredibly hard to trace. The illicit drug market has evolved into a global economic machine that dwarfs some of the fastest-growing legitimate sectors in the world today.
The market in heroin and cocaine is now estimated to be about twice the size for the market in an industry like cybersecurity, which has been growing at a phenomenal rate over the past 10 years, but it's still dwarfed by the heroin and cocaine markets. But I think for me, the most striking stat that I'd like to introduce this with is that between the years 2012 and 2016,
when illegal economies grow larger than major tech industries, it becomes clear how deeply integrated criminal capital is within global trade. For major drug syndicates, the most dangerous export is not the contraband itself, but the corruptive wealth used to control political systems.
Money laundering enables cartels to produce the most lethal thing that they produce around the world, and that's corruption. It enables them to be able to control countries, presidents of countries. Operation Sea Chase was a multi-agency task force to prosecute the biggest money launderers of the Medellin cartel. Most of the people I dealt with were high-level drug traffickers who had hundreds of millions of dollars.
By targeting the systems of power rather than just street-level transactions, cartels build nearly impenetrable walls of protection. Traditional policing strategies often fail because arresting lower-level players simply creates high-stakes vacancies that restructure the illicit market.
Drug crime is entirely different from any other forms of criminality, entirely different. If the police catch a drug dealer, crime goes up because there is an unlimited number of people wanting to take that opportunity. What happens over time is, at every level, is where police catch drug dealers, they help create monopolies.
Trying to eliminate a market defined by infinite demand only serves to consolidate power and establish stronger, more resilient monopolies. High-value burglary rings depend on calculated precision and internal trust, relying on weapons strictly for control rather than chaos.
My name is Stephen Gillen. It was estimated that I stole over $5 million worth of high-value goods as the leader of an organised burglary gang. This is how crime works. Our burglary gang would always carry some kind of weapons, but that is to control the situation.
Professional crews understand. Street-level syndicates operate in high-risk environments where survival requires extreme allegiance under constant threat of physical harm.
I was involved in gangs from 2005 until 2011. I'm grateful that I'm still alive, although I've come very close to losing my life inside of gangs. I've had a bunch of knives put to my neck, stomach. I've been stabbed twice in my right leg. I've had guns put to me.
Navigating this landscape, Lacos, the Nostra established an underground society built on absolute brotherhood and illicit wealth, operating entirely parallel to legitimate governments.
How would you describe the mafia? What is the mafia?
You know, what is the mafia? La Cosa Nostra, as we call it here in America.
Cosa Nostra is a cult.
It's a secret society. It's a brotherhood among men.
Everything that they do is about making money illegally.
The mafia is much more like a pack of rats that eat anything in their path, including each other.
Treating a syndicate like a secret cult creates an unbreakable internal discipline that makes external infiltration incredibly difficult. Modern crime bosses have relocated to luxurious offshore havens, utilizing global megacities to shield their operations from federal law enforcement.
But the crime capital of Australia is currently Dubai. That's because this glitzy megacity in the Persian Gulf has become home to nearly all of our biggest organised crime bosses. They think by moving offshore they're out of reach of federal authorities. But tonight they might be thinking again. An enormous leak of Dubai property records has revealed not only their home addresses, but also how the city has become
operating from high-end safe zones allows criminal masterminds to manage international empires with complete legal impunity. Transnational syndicates, like the triads, leverage deep connections across international jurisdictions, allowing them to evade local crackdowns.
They still have a connection with Hong Kong triad. Because some things happened, I got arrested on 1985, remember, okay? So after I got out, the couple of members I mentioned before from Sunday on, they asked me, hey, Jimmy, you want to, go to Hong Kong with us? Maybe you can, go outside and have some fun first because you're already inside for 2 years.
The fluid movement of key to convert raw street cash into clean, permanent assets. Sophisticated syndicates construct vast real estate networks that hide in plain sight.
The story of a Pakistani gang who turned drug money into a £17 million property empire, and how it all came crashing down. This was not just a handful of houses. It was a network worth £17 million, spread across 59 properties, and stretching as far as Bangor, a seaside town in Northern Ireland.
Bino, massive portfolios of residential properties, allows organized crime to quietly integrate billions into the legitimate economy. The production of synthetic narcotics has transformed from primitive kitchen table operations into highly organized industrial processes.
I started selling meth because clients of mine wanted access to meth. And so I started out buying very small amounts from street dealers that I knew personally. So an 8-ball, which is 3.5 grams at a time. The labs I saw in Southern California were a joke compared to even the makeshift labs that Walter had in the RV in Breaking Bad. They were using pots and pans, they were using cups and glasses.
While early operations relied on makeshift tools, modern setups have scaled up to match professional pharmaceutical standards. Changing global legislation is forcing illicit syndicates to pivot, transitioning their vast capital into newly regulated, legitimate markets.
Legalization of marijuana for recreational purposes across all provinces in Canada. It is a federal law. This is the first time that anything like this has happened. The marijuana industry in Canada is already huge. It's estimated to be about 0.2%.
When massive underground markets become legal, criminal syndicates leverage their existing supply chains to dominate legitimate commerce. Undercover operators must construct elaborate corporate personas, utilizing cash-heavy businesses to mask the movement of illicit wealth.
Built the persona of Robert Musella. I dressed the part, certainly had the lifestyle, drove a Rolls-Royce, Mercedes, Jaguar. I was embedded in real businesses. Had an air charter service with a private jet. We had a jewelry chain with 30 locations on the East Coast. A lot of cash goes through the Diamond District every single day. So if you've got those kinds of businesses, you have a very good excuse for where the cash came from.
Integrating dirty capital into highly active commercial districts provides the ultimate cover for moving millions without raising suspicion. High-intensity law enforcement efforts inadvertently weed out smaller players, leaving only the most resilient and ruthless cartels in control.
Environment, because only the most controlling and hostile gangs are the ones who are the most successful. Policing drugs has made the heroin and crack cocaine markets in the UK and around the world much more hostile, but also much more competitive. Because people get arrested, this creates opportunities.
Prohibitive policing doesn't stop the trade, it simply select breeds the most dangerous and deficient organizations to dominate the market. Elite burglary crews operate on insider intelligence, systematically scouting targets and exploiting leaks from compromised employees.
For properties is a role all by itself. The properties the gang would target, one would be ones that we were sent to with specific information, usually knowing there was high-value items in there. Others, there would be surveillance on them. They would be watched. Information could be from a disgruntled employee and just other people even close to the family.
Raw force is rarely the key to a high-value heist. Instead, it is precise, actionable data that bypasses security systems. Modern street syndicates structure their organizations to mimic legitimate corporations, complete with clear paths for recruitment, management.
The structure of a gang is almost like being in employment. Okay, you have the newbies that come involved, you then have management, you then have senior management. I got involved in a gang when I was around 13 years old, actually from selling sweets in school. I was approached one day by someone who said, how would you like to make more money? And initially I knew what he was talking about. I was scared, but when he started mentioning things about, you can be a man, you can provide help your parents at home.
By offering structure and financial incentives to vulnerable youth, syndicates ensure a constant supply of disciplined ground-level labor. At the height of their power, American crime families didn't just run rackets, they infiltrated key labor unions on critical infrastructure to build economic dominance.
The golden age of the mafia was the beginning of the 70s, when they had the strongest grip on legitimate business in the United States of America.
In the 1970s, they controlled trucking, the ports, the garbage business, and a lot of the meat, produce, and fish markets. Much of the building trade is in their hands. The carpenters and electrical unions.
Controlling legitimate labor sectors gave the mafia unprecedented leverage, making them an integrated part of the city's economic backbone. Safe havens with highly protective legal structures serve as dumping grounds for global syndicates seeking to park their wealth and luxury assets.
Tonight, how Dubai became a safe haven for some of Australia's most dangerous suspected criminals.
These are people at right at the top of the tree.
The baddest of the bad.
The baddest of the bad.
We take you inside a global investigation, exposing Dubai's luxury real estate market as a dumping ground for the dirty money of the criminal elite.
When premier real estate markets offer strict financial privacy, they naturally attract the world's most sophisticated money launderers. Triad syndicates utilize highly structured, generational rankings that insulate senior leaders while ground-level soldiers execute the daily operations.
And family, until now. After the top level, the second level is the general. We call it 426. After the 426 is the soldier. For the soldier, they call it 49. And after the soldier, that's the people who hang out with the soldier.
Keeping top-level decision makers separated by multiple layers of middle management ensures the organization survives even during heavy crackdowns, transforming illicit smuggling profits into clean commercial assets. Involves purchasing everyday properties through complex, multi-large schemes
of heroin smuggled into the UK. The National Crime Agency would later uncover how this empire was quietly assembled over nearly a decade, piece by piece, as the gang laundered its cash into bricks and mortar. What seemed like legitimate student lettings and family homes were in fact the foundations of one of the most lucrative laundering operations in the Midlands.
By embedding dirty cash into residential rentals, syndicates create reliable, legitimate income streams that are incredibly hard to trace. The global narcotics trade operates as a massive logistical network, quiet and highly integrated into everyday international shipping.
Macmillan, I've smuggled over $17 million worth of heroin internationally. This is how crime works. The heroin world is very dark and full of secrets, involves hundreds of thousands of people, mostly down at a very low level, and you're passing by heroin traffickers without even thinking about it.
Smuggling on a massive scale is less about stealth and more about mastering the standard logistics of global distribution. once local governments begin collecting massive tax revenues from previously regulated illicit trades, rolling back legalization becomes nearly impossible.
Colorado, which has had marijuana legalized for the past 3.5 years or so, last year they derived in taxes from the marijuana trade $120 million, which was over twice what they received from taxes on alcohol. And this is hypothecated into the health and education services. And once states acquire that particular addiction of tax revenue, then I think you'll...
The legal market creates a financial dependency for the state, making tax revenue the ultimate protector of the industry. Black money markets function as informal banking networks, allowing international entities to swap currencies and bypass the official banking system entirely.
It's an informal banking system that's made available to people who operate through the underground. So as a black money market operator, I have a supply of dollars. My supply comes from drug traffickers. Now I have to find people who have a demand for dollars. People who want to buy dollars are oftentimes importers around the world who otherwise have to go through their central bank and spend 25% of their money to officially get dollars.
By offsetting debts globally without physically moving cash across borders, syndicates completely eliminate the paper trails that regulators look for. Crime syndicates generate their most reliable profits by focusing directly on the most highly addicted, problematic segments of the market.
Target customers of those organized crime groups is the most problematic consumers of those commodities. The most hardcore 10% of heroin consumers consume 50% of the market value of that heroin. So you can see just how much money there is in dominating or exploiting that hardcore 10%. You can make an extraordinary amount of money with dealing with relatively few people.
Controlling a tiny, high-frequency customer base allows syndicates to generate astronomical returns with minimal public exposure. Modern high-end burglary crews have traded physical stakeouts for digital surveillance, using social media to map out luxury targets.
What they're doing all the time is very, very dangerous. It was different back then when we was active, but I know now a lot of really high-end burglary gangs that specifically go into
broadcasting luxury lifestyles. Online provides sophisticated crews with the exact blueprints and schedules needed for a seamless operation. At the highest levels of illicit organizations, the elite leaders remain entirely disconnected from the raw street operations, posing as legitimate real estate moguls.
The gang, the highest on the hierarchy. From what I understood, this couple, they were massive on the real estate scene in the UK. They were not involved in themselves in the dirty work, but a lot of the money that went going into their businesses came from the money that a lot of the foot soldiers, the youngers like myself, would be making and passing up the food chain. It's scary to think that
keeping the masterminds completely insulated ensures that while foot soldiers are prosecuted, the criminal infrastructure remains intact. Lucky Luciano's revolutionary idea was to reorganize street gangs into a structured, nationwide commission designed to operate like a major conglomerate.
Luciano's idea was to set up a organization nationwide, not unlike the Roman legions of Italy.
In 1931, Lucky Luciano incorporates 5 New York City street gangs into a single unit. These gangs become the 5 families of the modern mafia we know today.
Replacing open turf wars with corporate-style diplomacy created a highly efficient, multi-decade system of organized criminal dominance. Specific global hubs provide matched levels of financial secrecy, allowing elite criminals to run empires with virtual immunity from international prosecution.
Enemy number one sorts of criminals are able to operate there with a high degree of impunity in a way that you don't see anywhere else in the world.
When a host city offers absolute asset protection, it acts as a fortress for illicit capital that foreign law enforcement cannot breach. Leaving a high-level street syndicate is an incredibly difficult transition as active members face extremely high rates of incarceration or death.
In the gang life, with you really in the gang life right now, only two final results. First, you go end up in the prison doing time. Second, you go get killed.
The brutal reality of the downfall of even the most sophisticated real estate laundering. Networks begins when investigators systematically piece together the paper trail.
Amaran Zeb Khan, 38, received 22 years in prison for his central role in coordinating the heroin imports and laundering the profits. Muhammad Ali, 36, was also given 22 years, recognized as a key organizer and trusted partner of Khan. Sajid Hussain, 32, was sentenced to 22 years, reflecting his part in overseeing the import routes and
high profile. Real estate schemes can stay hidden for years, but once the financial links are mapped, the entire structure inevitably collapses. Cultivating agricultural commodities in isolated mountain regions remains a vital, highly resilient starting point for the global supply chain.
You don't need an awful lot of opium to do quite well if you're a farmer. They get at least $50 a kilo. Now, for a farmer, that's quite good. The opium poppy has a big bulb underneath it, and that's about the size of a golf ball. The farmers, when it's mature, scrape the sides of it.
Despite extensive international eradication efforts, the economic survival of local farming communities guarantees a steady supply of raw product. High-profile real estate schemes can stay hidden for years, but once the financial links are mapped, the entire structure inevitably collapses.